Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Projector Stories podcast. My name's Sarah. I'm a 1-3 emotional projector.
I'm Laura. I'm a 5-1 splenic projector.
And this is our podcast where we just talk about what's going on with us in real time in our mutual deconditioning journey. And we both have the 1156 channel in our chart, which is a storytelling channel. And we're both right-minded, so we like to just riff. So if you've been joining us, we appreciate you. Thank you for being here. And get your tea ready. We have ours, and we are going to hop in. So, Laura, has there been anything that has happened this week that you felt notable in relationship to human design and deconditioning or deconditioning, etc.?
Sure. Well, compared to last week, a lot less has happened. So it's another one of those weeks. I'm like, what day is it? I'm kind of lost, like just existentially existing. But over the weekend, I went to an engagement party for my friend, and it wasn't like a crazy party or anything. We were out from like 6 to 10, but just being social and being around people is exhausting for me. And it just totally changed my sleep schedule. So like I couldn't fall asleep after all that sacral energy. So I didn't go to bed until like 1 or 2 in the morning. And since then I've been sleeping in basically till 10. But it just like I was telling you how it takes me a very long time to recover. And the next day I was in bed in my pajamas. I like got up for coffee and tea breaks, but I was in my pajamas until like 5 p.m. And then I found out that people were coming over to our house. I was just very upset about it because as a projector, I need my rest, and I was not given ample time to rest. And so people came over, and like one of those said people knows I like get into bed at 8:30 o'clock at night in my pajamas. So imagine like being in bed until 5 p.m. in your pajamas, getting dressed for a couple hours and going back into bed at 8:30 back in pajamas. And so like he recognized my need for rest. And so he like suggested to everyone that they go home, not at an obscene hour because we're just playing board games and they wanted to stay longer. But yeah, it's just brutal sometimes being a projector and needing obscene amounts of rest. But that's about it this past week. How
Well,
about
I
you?
want to say been there as far as the 5 p.m. wake up time, 8 p.m. bedtime is concerned. I have been there. But also, there was a few different things that I wanted to say. Yeah, I mean, you're not a energy projector too, just like obviously if you're a splenic projector.
Well, no,
you're-
some splenics can be. They
Oh
can
yeah, 'cause
have
you have the
roots
motor. You're
and
right, you're
egos.
right. You're right. Thank
I'm
you
just not. I'm a classic projector with no motors defined for all of you that don't know my chart.
for all of yes. So thank you for clearing that up. But I just wanted to say that because I'm also living with a classic projector, and it's interesting to see the
You know,
differential.
that projector has a defined ego.
Oh, that's true. So she does have a motor, but she still doesn't. It's not.
She has low center. Well, the ego center is not like a powerhouse of energy. It has
No,
energy when the ego has energy, but it's not
right. It's
constant.
not like the adrenalized emotional center, which I have the root and the emo center
Yeah.
defined in the chart. But, I know other projectors who don't have any motors. Um, and it's just a different level of energy. And so, like, these types of things will take you out. And it's not to say that they don't take me out, because I notice like the same need for like a lot of space, but more so for me, like I'll get up and I'll do all of my things, which might be going to exercise at class. Like I go 3 or 4 times a week, or going for a long walk or whatever, but like I don't want to deal with people. So like after like a big event, I'll just be like, no people, please. We're good. Thank you for like 4 days. Like I don't want to see anyone. I don't want to hang out. I don't care. Like, sorry. Even though I have energy to like do other stuff, it's not there for human interaction at all. So it's like a different kind of open sacral depletion, I guess, but it's still projector
Yeah.
land.
Just to
Um,
give everyone an idea, I'm a couch potato, like hardcore, which I don't know if is correct for me because I have a left body, but like my mother asked if I wanted to go for a walk. I said no. I'm just like, I don't walk. I don't remember the last time I went for a walk. Like my poor dog, she has too many cheese snacks and no one takes her out on walks, so she's getting a little round around the belly. But yeah, I'm just trying to think of the last time I went for a walk. It was probably to take Christmas photos of my nephew back in like early December, late November. So it's been well over a month. So yeah, I don't exercise. So like kudos to you, Sarah, for being able to exercise 4 days a week.
It's not like I really like I don't feel like I would be able to be nice to anyone if I didn't. You know, like
Yeah.
so it's not like, I'm not like patting myself on the back for this. I realize like it's a necessity for adrenalized emotional energy to have that kind of outlet for it in order for the people around me to live another day.
And that's
So
what they say with the adrenalized spleen as well. Like if you have one of the three root to spleen channels, you should exercise. I have not self hanging gaits. I like those three channels. I each have one of the gates, but like not the full channels. I mean, I don't mind exercise if it's ballet class, but other than that, I'm just like, no, no
yeah.
thanks.
Well, and again, like, we don't have the largest like pool of projectors that we know like the ins and outs of every detail of their days. So I sense that there's probably a lot of classic projectors that if they were living correctly as themselves and not drinking too much coffee, because we know that the undefined root can consume a lot of caffeine when it's in not self land. And the defined root can too, but you know, point being that I think a lot of them might consider themselves couch potatoes, if not for the uh yeah, if they're actually like being themselves.
But I
So
feel like I know a lot of really athletic mental and self-projected projectors, which is weird. But I feel like I've seen and come across a lot of them.
well, but are they not self? Like,
No, they know human design. They're just people
okay.
in the groups who are extra athletic
Mm,
who just have that energy. I don't know if their bodies are left or right though in their environmental
yeah,
variable, but yeah. Anyways.
good thing. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just me knowing how much nervous energy I have and not seeing it on people who don't have this, like what the channel that I have. But that doesn't mean that the defined motors are the only types of projectors that are exercise holics or, just like to exercise a lot. So, and the self projected is its own thing because even though they don't have a motor, it's like they're doing what's right for them. So like whatever
Yeah.
is like right for them, like that could be exercising every day. That could be going, golfing every day. That could be going to Pilates every day. Like it's just what's correct for them is going to vary depending on their magnetic monopole, wherever it's driving. So um that's different. Although, yeah, the mental projector I can't account for. I have no I can't account for that. But yeah, so that's it. That's all for this week for you as far as interesting things.
Well, there's like the continuation of the whole what's going to happen with massage therapy. I think I mentioned I don't know if I mentioned it to you personally or on this platform, but the left advice I was given to try to correct the unresolved issue with the state board. And so were the people that came over this week. And so they were like telling me like threaten them with a lawyer, do this, do that. And like in the moment, I'm like, yeah. And then the next day I'm like, no, I don't have the
Yeah,
motivation
you're
to
like,
write that email. Like, how am I gonna I
yeah,
could really, and my aunt, who is a generator with a defined ego, she like her just relationship to motivation's interesting. She was telling me last night how sometimes she'll just count down from five. Like if she doesn't want to do something in her head, she'll just go five, four, three, two, one, and then she's able to do the thing. And I'm just like, well, that's you. I didn't tell her that like, she's special, but that won't work for me.
wait, what,
I didn't try it, so I can't discount it, but
she's
I
the
feel
one
like
you said with the defined ego.
yeah, so she's a generator with a defined ego. She has a 2644, but she's just like queen motivation and just like get the thing done and just do it. Oh, that's something I want to talk about today. um, sort of related to this, but do you want to share anything about your week, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, the real like main thing, I mean, this week was fucking weird. Excuse my French. I guess this is just gonna be an
Don't
explicit.
excuse it. Own your French.
Okay, don't excuse my French. This is now explicit, X-rated. Hide your children, hide your wives. Um, but what I was gonna say is the main thing that happened this week is I decided to steer away from my PHS. And mainly that was because of a lack of self-control, because basically what happened was I was going strawberry picking on Sunday, and I thought that's all we were doing. And so my friend from down here picked me up, and after strawberry picking, everyone was hungry and wanted to go to dinner, and basically we went out to dinner, which again, I don't know whoever remembers this, but I have calm determination, which means I need to be in a calm environment while I'm eating, paying attention to my food, um, with my eyes, because I also have outer vision on my design side. So there's like, I have like a little relationship that happens between me and whatever it is that I'm eating, and that has helped. When I tell you I had such bad IBS for the past year, and that basically got rid of it. Like, it's not perfect, but I couldn't function in my life for a year. Like, it was bad. Like, I just didn't have the energy or the feel good anything in order to just like be a part of my life. And so when this calm determination thing happened, it's like, wow. And then the whole human thing of just like, you stop appreciating it, because like it's like when you get sick, you realize how much you should be appreciating your health, but then like you get healthy and you forget that you were sick, and you're just like, back to your old bullshit. So that's basically, what happened with me eating in a calm environment. And I did experiment by deciding to like do dinner at my aunt and uncle's house with them once a week, which turns out to be a calm enough environment for me. But this week I went to a restaurant with my two friends, and if it was up to me, if I had driven my own car there, I probably would have just left after the strawberry picking. But like once I'm in the restaurant and I'm also hungry, like I actually am hungry, um, it was just a fucking free for all. And I ended up not eating a lot, but anything that you eat outside of your correct environment is like poison. So it says raw. And so I basically ingested like a bunch of poison, and I was in a really bad shape Monday and part of Tuesday, because my whole body was like, this is not, like, I was back to IBS land in a sense. And I was just like, wow, this is a really good reminder that I need to follow my PHS and not forget what happens if I don't. Because, there's like a part of me, maybe this is being a 1-3, that still like doesn't believe that human design is real. Like, I don't know if anyone else has that. It's like there's a part of me that like lives my life by it. And then there's an aspect of me that like, this isn't real. Like, just waiting for something. Like, how is it that if I eat in a calm environment, how is it that environment matters? Like nothing has ever like stated that in any dietary regimen. I mean, of course, there's something to be said about if you are overstressed and your digestive capacity, but like needing to always eat in a calm environment, like that's a wild thing to think about. And part of me was like, this isn't real. And part of me was like, this is as real as it gets. And I know that it's real. Still, there's that part of me that's like likes to test boundaries and whatnot. But that was one of the biggest like deconditioning lessons that I learned of a 1-3, of like, Ra also said, like, if you're gonna make, or actually, I think a lock said this in my reading, but if you're gonna make a mistake, don't make a mistake, the same mistake twice. If you're a 1-3, like, you can make as many mistakes as you want, but learn something, right? And so I needed to learn something from that and just not do it again.
I wonder how much of that is your caves environment. Just like thinking about calm in a sense compared to my nervous touch, like it's the environment that matters. But with caves, there is a sense of peace and security that you need in your environment. Like not a lot of ruckus, buckus, like I do with my wet kitchens. So I wonder how much of being in a restaurant that's lively, how much of it is not being calm versus just being in the wrong environment altogether,
Yeah.
whether that environment is calm or not.
Yeah. Well, and I wondered that too, because I'm like, I'm such a it's like the first of all, it's the rustle and bustle of like the lack of security that comes from that kind of environment that is, problematic. And then it's, of course, eating in that kind of environment. So yeah, I don't, these are where there's like nuances, and it's gonna be a really interesting life to like never eat out again, Like that's
Yeah.
why, unless it's like a really like very calm restaurant and my back is to the wall. The thing that I realized too is like when I eat, like when I'm actually connecting with my food, it's almost like I said this before, it's becoming me before I ingest it. And there's like this simpatico relationship with it that feels like I know what's going on. Like I have control over, I know exactly what I'm putting into my body. When I'm in those types of environments, right? Those like stimulating environments, it's like I don't know exactly what I'm putting in my body because I'm too busy focused on a million other things. That it's like I have this deep primordial fear of what it is that I'm eating, even though I'm just like shoveling stuff into my mouth like fast anyway. Because I don't have the opportunity to study it and look at it and like do all of that stuff. So it's also like I get anxiety from eating like that, and the food doesn't sit, and like I can eat the exact same MFing meal by myself alone in my bedroom and not have a single problem. So like this is some crazy shit. Like everybody, like you got to follow your PHS. Like I don't know that. I mean, projectors have a lot of autoimmune problems and all kinds of stuff from living in Notself and being conditioned with sacral energy to be super slaves. Like there's all kinds of problems, but like so much can be health wise addressed, I feel like, with PHS. And that's just a wild thing to know. And it's like another reason why I feel like I should be screaming this from the rooftops. But then there's the part of me that just doesn't give a shit. Like I just don't, it's like I also just don't care. Like I'm just like a little guy over here. Like just like a little guy who's just like, a human and not able to like focus on anything for too long. That's even if it means the craziest shit that you could possibly imagine. So that was my kind of big key takeaway. Do you want to touch on what you wanted to say before I
Yeah.
share my week?
Yeah, first off, I want to say your audio has been cutting out a tiny bit, so apologies to anyone listening if you're missing some of the things Sarah says. I don't know, for me, it's like very short and brief, so I'm not going to ask you to repeat yourself because then that'll ruin our right-mindedness. So we'll just continue on and hopefully it's not too disruptive to you. But also in terms of while we're here, like the calm versus nervous touch, I just want to say it's funny because like I feel like I'm the opposite where I can't focus on what I'm eating. And like when I overly focus on what I'm eating, then it's not right for me. Like I'm the person that's gonna shove unconsciously food down or guzzle and not at all process what's going on. And like a lot of times I'm still like into the nervousness of what is stimulating me that I don't even realize I finished my snack and I'm like going to my plate, like ready, like there's a SpongeBob scene where Patrick Star eats his chocolate bar and he forgets about it. And then SpongeBob's like, Patrick, you already ate your chocolate bar. And Patrick's like, no, you have my chocolate bar. That's me. Like I will eat my food. And then when I'm like realizing, oh, time to take a bite, like there's no more food left. I'm like, what happened? Because I was like in a different mental state when I was eating it. So that is, just ironic because I'm the opposite of you. But what I
Yeah.
was saying before was kind of along the threads of that ego center thing of in the self-help community, which again is an ego-centered thing because self-help is all about self-improvement and thinking you are able to improve yourself, the concept of no one's gonna save you, like no one's coming to help you, you have to do it yourself. Like you have to pull yourself up out of your own problems. No one's gonna rescue you. And I feel like that is the opposite of what exists for projectors. Like as projectors, we're told like someone's gonna come in and save you and give you the invitation that's gonna fix all your issues. Like you don't have to do anything, just keep on waiting. And so again, like the whole like I believe it, but I also don't believe it, just like you, Sarah. Like there is a part of my brain. I don't know if it's the non-self part of my brain, but it's like this isn't real. Like you have to save yourself because no one's gonna come and save you. No one's gonna come and rescue you from debt or from issues. Like I'm just like hanging out in my room. No one's coming knocking on my door. Kind of like the delusional, like the princess in her tower waiting for the prince on his horse to come swoop in. Like, yeah, I'm waiting for a prince. Like, I don't know when he's gonna show up. But I told Sarah just like we give each other little notes of like what we want to talk about when we come on. And my comment was location, 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 particularly for undefined G's. Because if you're in the correct environment as an undefined G, that white horse with the prince is going to come in and rescue you. But if you're in the wrong location, like you are not meeting the right forces, you are not aligned to the correct trajectory, and no one's going to come to save you. And it's just like, oh, the frustration of like the counterbalance of trying to follow straight and enjoy straight. I can't talk today, sorry. Trying to follow S and A and wait and keep on waiting and not initiate. And yet, you know, the pressure of like you have to do something because it's not gonna fix itself. Sorry, like this made more sense in my head when I was thinking about it, and I feel like I'm unable to well articulate it as per usual with me. But yeah, Sarah, thoughts about this
Yeah,
concept?
I think it's funny because I feel like we both have that internal feeling like something is off by the way that we say things, but I actually always feel like I understand what you're saying. And I feel like other people do too and enjoy it. So, and that also speaks to it's so funny just to go on a tiny tangent, but like I made a TikTok that went viral, like I told you guys before, and I was in a bad mood when I made it. Like I wasn't like I was like, wow, I like what am I even saying? It wasn't like and I have to remind myself that every time I go to talk that like it's never gonna feel right necessarily. Like maybe it'll feel right once I'm fully passenger consciousness and I'm just letting the vehicle do everything. But until that day comes, like I always feel slightly off. But yeah, I mean, I agree with the relativity of it all, right? Like there's a relativity when it comes to everything, including this is what I love about human design is that it's this like conceptual framework that underlies everything. And it, like, for example, it's what is differentiated within the individual. There are things as Homo sapiens that are consistent across us, right? Like I was telling Laura before we hopped on about how there's this emotional release Instagram and how like different aspects of illness will show up in the body in specific ways. And that's like the ways that we're all the same, right? This is where like we can look at things in a homogenized way, I guess. With illness, and there's an argument to be made, and I'm listening to rave psychology about just the fact that like the illnesses that we get are all that are like mass, like even COVID, homogenized illness, and the cure is a homogenized cure. Like this is all not self stuff. Like all the sick stuff is like not self stuff. It's like if we're really unique, we're gonna get a really unique illness. It's gonna take us out. I'm just kidding. He doesn't say that. That's just me extrapolating. But insofar as just like there's all of this relativity to all of these like old cliches and idioms and concepts within the self-help community, within the spiritual community that like one person's poison is another person's medicine. And it's also where, you know, I really get on my soapbox and want to just start talking about how everyone's unique. And like that is something that would work for someone who's left strategic and has a defined ego, you know, like in a sense, maybe a sacral or like a manifester that would work for a manifester, right? Like there's people that fall into categories that specific things work for, but it cannot be generalized, right? Like it can't be generalized. And that's where, you know, the whole pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. I mean, there's also like all of this like nuance within understanding what it actually means. Like if we're thinking about self-help in terms of human design, what does it actually mean to truly help yourself, not in the way that I used to help myself, which is like I'm going to stick to this specific program, I'm going to do everything right, I'm going to meditate for 40 days in a row, and at the end of it everything's going to be good, you know, like all of that kind of uh like white knuckling things is just not, it's no longer the way that I understand what self-help actually looks like if we're really being true to who it is that we are. Everything about self-help to me has to do with slowly, brick by brick, dismantling the not self to the point that it no longer has power over our lives. And this is where it's not a matter of addition, but subtraction for those of us that don't have defined egos. It's a matter of, and you know, I mean, I guess you could say there's some things that are additive, but for the most part it's like removing all of this stuff before you're able to start building again. Like removing all of the not self, you know, the mind is the hardest thing to heal. And so you might be able to heal your body, and you may even be able to get in the right environment, but if you don't heal your mind, you can't see what's there for you to be, for you to see anyway. So like there's something to be said about like you might be in the right environment and your prince comes and you can't even see him, right? Because your mind's fucked up. So it's just like there's all of these layers of relativity to it, and it requires you to just have like an absolute lack of being able to believe your own bullshit and like a real earnestness for everything, because there are going to be moments where, not to say it's like it's not about pushing through, but there's going to be moments where you do have to pull yourself out of your comfort zone in a sense in order to get into alignment, because the not self will always pull you into essentially like what is and has been comfortable for you. And so being in alignment at first may feel really wrong because you've been saturated in not self land for so long. So there's a lot of different threads there, Laura. Is there anything that you want to pull on?
I don't know. I feel like with your peripheral view, you're looking at the broader picture. And like in my head, I was thinking of like specific examples. So it's like hard to um narrow it down in a way that encompasses the peripheral when in my head it's very fixed on the unique examples. But yeah, everything you said makes sense. Like all valid points. We're all each unique. And according to SNA, like if the opportunity presents itself to, you know, save yourself, to pull yourself up by the bootstraps, then so be it. But that's like not the case for everyone. And it's something what you said about the not self-mind, like in conditioning, you know, it's a never-ending journey. I feel like something a lot of the seasoned people say in our Facebook groups, not our, but like our as a community, is the mind never stops. Like the not self mind is 24/7 gonna live with you. Like you lose it when you die. Like that's the only escape route. So you're always gonna deal with the not self mind trying to tell you otherwise and trying to convince you to do this or do that or say things shouldn't be this way. So it's very valid, and perhaps this is just the themes that my own not self mind is feeling about its life itself, to feel like it should save itself and wait for that moment. But yeah, going back to the self-help thing, I guess there are focused things that want to come out. It makes me think of like group programs. And, before several years ago, there's like great programs that I really, really wanted to join, but I didn't have the money for. And I chose not to because I didn't want to get into debt. And it was like mental decisions. Like, obviously, I wasn't invited into these courses. And these courses are therefore more conducive for generators who can respond to it and who can, in the moment, go, if they want to go into a course or not. But like, it made me think of all the times that I signed up for something and like it didn't fix my problems. Like you said, like you can sign up for a class that says like you are going to get this experience and it's going to do this for you. And like, no, that's not the reality. Like we're all deep into our not selves. Like just because you do something doesn't mean it changes you and that you're going to be different. All these helps. That's why the self-help industry does so well financially because people will always have issues, self-worth issues or other issues that will be perpetuated by someone else saying like, oh, just take this, just read this book, just take this class and all your problems will go away. Like, no, that's not how it works. Um, but yeah, it was just a train of thought. Because again, like in these non-human design groups on Facebook, where they are more self-help related, like you see a lot of people say, like, I didn't wait for someone to save me. I realized no one was coming to save me. So I did the thing and doing the thing myself led to these results, led to me being financially independent, this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, kudos to you, but it's, I wish that was the case for everyone, but it's not. Like, projectors are here to be helpless. I told Sarah I was like, listening to her reading with a lock, and something he said was like, you can't, like, you might want to do something, but you can't do it. Like, you're not built to do the thing. You have to wait for the other person to invite you. Like, you can't just, like, there's no energy there. We don't have a sacral energy or the manifesting energy to do something. We're constantly dependent on the other. And yeah, it's just woe is me what to do other than wait, other than try to align yourself to your correct environment and correct people. But yeah, personally, I don't know. I like have felt like I was in the wrong environment for a long time since I was in middle school. I knew I didn't want to live here in Southern California. Lo and behold, here I am living for like 15 years in Southern California after I came back after college. And even though my spleen knew at a young age, like this isn't the place for me, perhaps because of the G center and like it being the wrong trajectory, I feel like there's something missing. Like there's a puzzle piece that I will not find here because it is not here and I have to be somewhere else. But that is also a not-self quality of the undefined G center of feeling like there's something missing based on a location. So it's kind of a catch-22. But yeah, just personal thoughts about that. Like, no one's gonna save you. Gotta go pick up yourself by the bootstraps and go to that other location where you will find the right forces.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and just to say about your specificity because of your left view, like highly appreciate it because my ass will start saying shit and I'm like, Laura, is that right? Like did I just make something up? Like please correct me on the podcast. And also just like sometimes I go wide, Laura goes deep, like, and so it's very helpful to have both, I feel like. So always share that. And what you were saying reminded me of, well, a few different things. One, I was listening to again PHS, and this particular audio, Ra is talking about the man who discovered the cure or the vaccine to the polio vaccine, and he's just ripping him a new one. Basically, he's like, this is all not self. Like everything that he did is not self. Like he's all everything not self. And this is
And yet
also
that led to a cure for the polio vaccine.
right for the homogenized program. It's like what I was just saying before was me pulling on that, what he had said about, homogenized diseases, homogenized cures. And it's like, the program doesn't care about us specifically. It cares about where the program is going. So the program is indifferent. Like homogenization is the is the lifeblood of the program. You know, that's what pushes the agenda forward. And so perhaps someone else would have discovered the polio vaccine and, you know, yada, yada. There may be some, you know, there's a lot of good things to say about, like, it's like if somebody discovered the cure for cancer, Ra would find a way to be like, not self, you know, and it really made me think, because I was like, everything that we think that we're supposed to be doing, you know, there's just like the vanity of our not self minds, and like the concept of, you know, just not knowing really where it is that we're supposed to be. And I was thinking about what you said on, we don't have energy to do things. And it's like the vanity of my not self mind has always been, you could do this. You could do this. Like it's always, this is pre-human design. But it's always like, you could do this, you could do this better, you could do it. Like if you tried, if you applied yourself, you could do this. You know, like that's always how it's like the internal dialogue has gone for me. Um, Probably because I was trained to be a not self manifester, I think, more so than a generator. Um, as a kid. But yeah, I mean, it's just, it's interesting to think about how there is this uh emphasis on these material, like finding material success. And I think Laura and I both share the fact that like we could give a shit about material success. I mean, it'd be nice, but really we just want to be like correct as ourselves, whatever that looks like. And like if we could feel that, I feel like, and I don't think that that's why most people come to human design, or I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think a lot of people are like, how do I get the thing that I want? And by, if I come to human design and I do all of the things, then I'm going to discover the cure to polio. And it's like, actually, you're not going to discover the cure to polio if you're being correct as yourself. So a lot of this like material success stuff is just, and I was listening to Jim Carrey talk. I don't know if you know his chart, Laura, but he only has channel 360 from the root to the sacral. I'm sorry, yeah, from the root to the sacral defined. Everything else is completely, oh, not completely open, but everything else is open. All of his other centers are open. And he was basically going into this whole thing about how he does believe that manifestation is real, but he doesn't believe that any of it matters. And it made me realize that the only people that we're going to listen to who talk about material success not being the be all and end all of what it is that we're here, that we're doing, are people that have gotten to the apex of the hierarchy and realized that it isn't enough. And so it's like I could be sitting here saying material success is never going to do it for you, you know, all of the things. Jim Carrey could be over there saying it, but like people don't listen. They don't, because it's like the whole not self mind thing is to go after the material success and to, you know, be something in the hierarchy. Or I'm sorry, and to be at the higher, at a higher place within the hierarchy. And yeah, I mean, the, as far as it relates to the Open G Center, I don't know. I'm kind of, I've gone on too, I've gone too far to one direction. I don't know exactly how that relates to what you were talking about before. Um, but I guess a lot of it, just to kind of broadly cover what I just said, is just that we don't know what it is that we're supposed to be doing, right? Our not self mind does not know. There's like a vanity that thinks that that it does know, or that it can do certain things, and that if it has a specific formula, then it will get to a specific place that's the correct place. And it's like, yeah, the homogenized correct place, potentially. It's not necessarily the correct place for you. And so this isn't really glamorous. Like human design isn't glamorous. You know, it's not like you're going to become the next fucking Lady Gaga if you follow your strategy and authority. Likely she's not following it, you know? And so Ra was talking about killing your heroes. He's like, I have no heroes because everybody's homogenized, even the people who've done the most amazing things. Which is kind of dark, but yeah, it was well taken nonetheless.
Um, I have things to say, but it's more of a pivot.
Pivot.
You want to pivot? Okay. Um, relating to, well, like, yes, to everything you said to give validation, but relating to the whole like hierarchy, it's not just money. I would say it's love too, because like those are the two things we kind of put at the top of our society. Like, oh, find the perfect relationship and you'll be complete. Oh, just have the right amount of money, which is a gazillion dollars, and you'll be set. Um, but the concept of like relationships solving all our issues as well, and just like if you just have the right partner, then you're good to go. Um, and if we want to pivot into that direction with the 41, because this week we
Yeah.
have Rape New Year with gate 41, which is the gate of fantasy. And so like I've been wanting to talk about this gate for several weeks now, but I feel like the excitement and anticipation has worn off just based on like my own personal feelings about today. I'm not as excited to talk about it. So I feel like in my head I've built up all this excitement for 41 and now it's just like fallen flat, which is totally fine. But the concept of fantasy, I find it fascinating as someone who does not have gate 41 nor any of the experiential ways. Like Sarah has 3 gates of the experiential way, 41, 30, and 36, and 36 is her son, so it's a huge part of who she is. um but as y'all know, I've said here before that I've started reading romance novels, which is just like all 41. It's all like romantic fantasy. And I have a lot to say. I don't know if it'll make any sense because it's been, a moment since I've thought about it, but anything you want to say before I like go down the rabbit hole of this? I cannot hear you right now. I think you are muted. Sorry.
No, sorry, everybody. I was muted. She was right. I had to go maneuver something, so I didn't want to make noise. But I want you to go plug along. Of course, there's things that I'll say about 41, but I want to hear what you were thinking about on it.
Okay, so where to begin? As someone who has long been wanting a relationship and who has been waiting for that white horse knight thing, listening to Sarah's reading with a lock is just like a giant bucket of cold water splashed in my face because I am not here for that. Like, that is not my trajectory in this lifetime. Like, I'm not designed for love or romance. And so it's kind of like sad and disappointing that the homogenized world like hypes up fantasy and love and all this stuff for us to assume that it's all fair, like we all deserve it. We're all going to experience it in some way, shape, or form. And that's just not the case, no matter how homogenized that idea is. Because the people who are meant for it are people with aspects like love gates, people with defined G's, like they're people who are built for love. And 41 is one of the love gates. But it's just interesting to think about fantasy. And as I've deconditioned, I feel like my not self has had fantasies about love and romance, but as I continue to decondition, I realize like I don't have those anymore. Like I don't fantasize romantically. And then sometimes I miss it and I want to fantasize romantically, but there's like nothing to fantasize about because that's just not who I am. And like one of the thoughts I've had about this is the fascinating, like, I feel like I overuse this word, but the fascinating um structure of gate 41 being in the root center. It's like the pressure to take action, to have an emotional experience that's going to lead to manifestation. It's not a head center gate, and yet we think about fantasy and we think about it in the mind, but it's not a head pressure gate. It's not inspiration. It's the pressure in the body to have an experience. And along this journey of reading romance novels and having the quote unquote fantasy of wanting to write novels, not necessarily romance novels, but novels, um, is I've started listening to some podcasts and as someone not with a huge amount of individual circuitry, but as someone who appreciates sound as being a point of recognition for correctness. I really like people's voices. So apologies if you don't like my voice, because I will like or dislike people based on the sound of their voice. Anyways, I was listening to a podcast and one of the guests on these podcasts had a like delicious voice. Like she has the most gorgeous voice ever. And so I needed to know who she was. And listen to her more. And I found out that she wrote a book about her experiences as an ex-dominatrix, which was interesting. I told Sarah about this to a little extent, but it's just like not something I've ever had a fantasy about. And like, I don't know this person's design, but she has, apart from her delicious voice, she had the fantasy of getting into DOMs and subs and all that, like BDSM, to the point where she is probably a generator. She saw an ad for a position in some sort of like, I'm gonna call it sketchy, but like this location in which people go to live out their sexual fantasies. And like fantasies are deeply sexual. Like these people, like she wrote about her clients in her book, which is The Scarlet Letters. I think that's what it's called. Um, her memoir. And she, like, people would have really weird fantasies that they would go and pay money to live out, to have sexual satisfaction and like gratification. And it's just like, I don't know. For me, it's fascinating as someone who doesn't have this energy in me or the desire for these experiences. Um, it's fun to watch it and see it with like no judgment, to be like people are people and that's their unique experiences or not self experiences, what have you. But anyways, I'm just sharing. I don't have any
No.
concrete things to say about it other than that I find it so fantasizing. There we go. Fascinating. Freudian slip. I find
Freudian
it
slip.
fascinating. People who have fantasies and then have the energy to act on them and make them happen. And it's the initiation codon, right? If we're looking at the genetic sequence, all genes start with gate 41. I don't know the amino acid, but this is where things begin. This is where life begins, gate 41. And so it's these fantasies, this pressure for fantasy that allows for change and mutation for everything else to exist because it's the first step. So it's huge and crucial to the program, but also to all of us as existing within this Maya, this matrix. This core of fantasy is the heart of it. So yeah, I think it's cool.
Yeah. Well, no, and I mean, oh, there's so many things to say. I too love voices or hate voices, and it's nothing personal. It's literally just preferential. And I've literally fallen in love with a voice. Like I feel like I fell in love with someone just because of their voice, and like everything else was just a fifth line projection. so so I totally, and I guess it's also just like maybe this person's on your fractal and the people whose voices you don't like aren't. I don't know. I wonder what in our design is interested in voices, but that's not necessary.
Individual circuitry. Because if we look at, sorry to interrupt you, but if we look at cognition and the six tones, none of them are sound. There's touch, there's taste, there's smell, there's sight. Two sights, internal sight, external sight, but there's no sound. So like we all have sound to a certain extent that lives through that individual circuitry.
Okay, so it's through individual circuitry though.
Yeah. So like people with more intense individual circuitry gates and channels, they're more sensitive to sound, I would say. Like for them, like music lives in individual circuitry. Like gate 12 is the gate of expressing ourselves out of that individual circuitry. 22 is the gate of listening, or one of, I think, yeah, the deaf gates are individual. Like it's all there to a certain extent.
Well,
I,
yeah.
yeah,
No, no, that's interesting. That's super interesting. I didn't think about it like that. And I did know that, well, because sound acoustics is everything, right?
it's
So it's
frequency. Yeah,
it's
it's
everything.
vibration. It's everything.
So it's literally everything. So that's why it's not one of the six. It's not included because it's all of them. But I also, this is a bit of a tangent, but I realized that the person whose voice I had this experience with, it wasn't them, it was their voice, had their freaking Mercury on the design side in gate 41. And I have Saturn in 41. So that's fun. That is fun. But I mean, there's so many different things I want to say about it. And I really liked what you said about it being a physical pressure as opposed to a mental pressure, because you can fantasize as much as you want in your mind, but like your body has to have the energy to go after it. And it is like a runaway train, I find, because I have the whole channel, and it's like, my very well-meaning mind, my unconscious mind, like it's very, and the not self mind is very like black and white, like you should do this, you shouldn't do that. But like that channel inside of me is like, we're going to do what we want to do. Like whatever it is, whatever the cost, it doesn't matter. We're going after the thing. And there's nothing in heaven and hell that's going to stop me when it gets activated. And just because it's activated doesn't mean it's correct, though. Just because I'm going after something like in that kind of pressurized way doesn't mean that it's correct, though. And Ross said that if you look at Saturn in your chart, that's where basically you get punished for not being true to the law of yourself, which is the law of yourself. Typically, he talks about it in terms of Jupiter. So you can like see the law of yourself in Jupiter, and then you can see your punishment in Saturn. And, it could be, it could have any of the other planets could have something to do with it as well. But the punishment, no matter what's happening, if it's because of your design, Mars being, whatever, Saturn is where the punishment is going to play out. And um, the only, I guess you could say, reward of Saturn is that you don't get punished. It's the absence of punishment. That's the reward of Saturn, which is an interesting thing to think about for me, because as we talk about 41, that is where my Saturn is. And I think about how every time I've gone after things that aren't correct for me, or my not self has gone after things that aren't correct for me, without exception, I get punished. Like internally, there's like the fantasy dies in a sense when I'm going after something and I haven't followed my strategy and authority. I haven't followed my own internal laws, all of those things. And, also the root center has to do with the adrenals. And that too, this past year specifically, like I noticed like how shot my adrenals were from, again, like not following my own law in a sense, my own authority, my own emotional authority. And so there's something to be said too about people who have this as a hanging gate, and they have like the not self. There can just Ra had this as a hanging gate. He had the 41 and no 30, and he said that it was responsible for like so many relationships that were not right, and like so much basically like thinking that he was in love with women that he slept with, kind of things that would happen to him. And so it really makes you wonder. But the thing is, and he also talked about this, I know I'm going to go all over the place, but when I was talking before about the killing your heroes thing, which is, he didn't say kill your heroes, but he said basically he doesn't have any heroes because everybody's in not self land. Um, there was, oh shit, I forgot where I was going. Laura, do you wanna jump in here before I
Well,
go ahead?
I feel like it's a tangential pivot that might take you even
I don't
further away,
I don't know if
which
I'm
is
ever
like
gonna find that thought again.
this idea of heroes. I mean,
Mhm.
you only brought this up to me today, but I've been thinking about it. I just finished a book this morning, um, and I appreciated it because the main character, the main hero, to use that pun, has a disability that in that he is deaf, and it takes place during the Gilded Age. Like this is like completely unrelated to human design, but it's what my voice wants to talk about. But he, as part of the Gilded Age, like people were discriminated against, and he was put in an insane asylum for being deaf, for people just trying to abuse him. And I found out in the process of like reading about this book and the characters, which is fictional, but there is a reporter during that time in the US, Nellie Bly, who went undercover into an insane asylum to document her experiences of the abuse. and the like horrible quality of life that took place there. And I was like, who is this person, Ellie Blind? Like went down the investigative process. And like just reading about her, it's so inspirational that I'm like now putting her up on a pedestal. I looked up her chart, which like obviously we don't have the exact time of her birth, but it's like highly individual. 6124, 4323, 5710, maybe. And the oh no. Hold on.
Okay, we lost Laura for a second. However,
Sorry about that. My phone was on Do Not Disturb, but it decided to not decided to disturb me regardless, and I was kicked off the Zoom call. Anyways, Nellie Bly, I was looking up her chart. I think she also had the 360, just heavy individual circuitry. And this woman was the first woman to like travel around the world independently, and she did it in under 80 days. Like there is a book that was written fictional, and like she took inspiration from that and decided to report about it. But just like reading about her, I'm like so inspired. I'm just like, wow, who is this woman? And I feel like with what Sarah just said about Raw, like saying like let's trash our heroes, they're all not self. I'm just like looking at this woman who led her individual life, and she did the mutative things. She like went undercover into an asylum. Like she had to get herself committed. She had to act crazy and get hospitalized in order to be admitted into an insane asylum, which is just bonkers. But anyways, that's just what I had to say in response. I don't know if you remember your train of thought, Sarah.
yes, actually I do. Thank you. Oh my gosh, that's so funny though. I mean, and I'm obviously paraphrasing Raw and I'm not doing it well because I don't have a strategic mind. So there's no memorization here. It's just like the vibes that I get. So I say things. He says, right, like the homogenization, the not self homogenization, it does serve the purpose of the continuity of the program. And so it really comes down to values insofar as if you think that your heroes are trash or not, right? Like if the guy who made the polio vaccine is a good guy or just a not self guy. It's a pretty steep thing to think about. But I was thinking in terms of the 41, the value of not self fantasy to the program. Like it's so important to the program. It is so deeply important to the program. It's how we keep this whole thing moving. It's the only start codon. And it's also obviously valuable to the individual who's living correctly as themselves. But it's like fantasy is so deeply important to the program continuing the way that it is. It's so important to the 59-6 and the process of, keeping the gene pool alive by fantasizing about a perfect relationship or this or that or the other thing. And I was having this conversation today where like I kind of had the realization, and I'm going to sound jaded when I say this, but like I'm probably not going to get married to one person and be with them forever. Like that is probably what's going to happen to me. I mean, I know that I'm going to have relationships. I have no question about that. But whether or not that leads to a lifelong partnership seems a little bit unlikely for me given my design and things that I need to be doing if I'm living correctly as myself. Sure, if I'm not self, I could easily do that. But as myself, don't really know. I don't think it's going to happen. And like for a moment, I was like, why do I feel bad about that? Like, why do I feel bad about thinking like that? And it's because of the program. Like, it's because everyone's like, oh, like you'll find somebody, it's gonna be okay, like, blah, 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 whatever. And it's like, who cares? Like, why is that the main fucking show? Like, isn't there anything else that's more interesting than that? And fantasy, typically with fantasy, it involves somebody else. So I feel like everybody's
Yeah.
most interested in fantasizing about like, some other person being involved, whatever the fantasy is. And that's why there's all of this stuff that the program needs in terms of bonding and romance and relationships to keep the gene pool working towards its ultimate outcome, which is the rave coming in. But there's an more ultimate outcome, but that's the immediate outcome for now. So yeah.
I think it was in the Love Gates recording or PDF, whatever it is, ebook by Raw. He talked about 41. He was looking at actual people's charts and analyzing them. And I'm pretty sure, again, right mind, have no idea if this is accurate or not, but I'm pretty sure the charts that he looked at with Gate 41 were adulterers. And
Mm.
it's like people who were in a married relationship and there was no electromagnetics in the 41. It just like left something to be wanted. And so these people, even though they had a relationship, would seek out fantasy elsewhere. You would seek out fantasy. Like you need your fantasies to be realized, or the person that has 41 needs it. And so they would seek relationships outside of the commitment to
Yep.
have those fantasies fulfilled, regardless if it actually results in the bond or not. So
Yep.
yeah, it's fascinating, but it's like the experiential way. It's like I want to have a human experience. I want to see what it's all about, not necessarily to repeat it, but to see what it is.
Right.
It's
Well,
yeah.
yeah, and not necessarily to like do the thing that you were fantasizing about with the person that you were fantasizing about it with, right? Like, and that's what Raw was saying in that in the when he's talking about the love gates, it's like you're just gonna keep going to a new partner and a new partner and a new partner as soon as the reality sets in and you can no longer live inside of the fantasy. And that's usually what happens with gate 41 and a not self person. um is this kind of needing a fantasy, the reality of someone that they're with sinking in, realizing that the fantasy is not going to be able to exist within that relationship, and so to preserve the fantasy, finding someone else, fantasy doesn't work without relationship, etc., etc. And I gotta say, this is a side note, but when I was deeply in my own not self romantic, problematic situations, I could not even read that fucking book because it was so upsetting to me that like this is how love worked. Like I did not want to believe it. Like I was like, no, no, no. Like I was just blind and deaf. My deaf gates were like, nope, 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 wrong. Finally, I've come to a place where I can accept it. And I can also recognize that you may find a deeper kind of love if you're, deconditioned with someone and not necessarily have any of those electromagnetic gates, but like there's a bond because of recognition, like shared recognition of what the other person is. And I think, you know, that's not to say that the love gates aren't important. It's just to say that I think if you're being correct, there's like, we're looking at it from like a homogenized, not self perspective of the love gates, like just ruling our lives. But I think that, there's like a more individualistic way to look at them and relationships too.
True. Um, I could bring up another tangent or we can close.
Yeah,
Either way, how are you feeling?
it's up to you because I want to, you know, okay, then go ahead.
I already forgot what it was. Let me see if I can remember.
Welcome to the right-minded, we don't know what we're talking about half the time podcast.
It was there in my head. Was it related to Love Gates? Was it related? I feel like it was some like a spin-off of whatever it was that we were talking about. But yeah, now I don't know what it was because I wanted to check in with you, and then that just yeah, it just derailed.
That's okay.
Lost it. Sorry. Is there anything you want to bring up?
Story of our lives. I mean, it's just so funny. I feel like yeah, it's so annoying when you have a thought and then and an inspired thought at that, and then the thought just disappears like poof, and you're like, I'm never getting back to that again. I'm never gonna find that again. It's gone for good. Um, Not saying that that was that thought, but I don't like it. It's an annoying just aspect of my mind. Is there anything else? I mean, no, I just want to, I guess, emphasize the 41, the importance of the 41 as it relates to the upcoming Pluto transit through 41, and that
You
as
know
it
when that starts?
yeah,
Hold
so
on.
that doesn't start until April 40. It doesn't
Okay.
go until April, but then it's also Pluto is going to retrograde back into 60. But that's
Yeah.
like the beginning of the 41, and then I think it's in there for good later on down the line. And I don't know the dates on that, but I know that it will be in 41 in April, which is going to be an interesting thing to see because um from Ra's one of Ra's classes, who knows anymore which one is which, but like he talks about how Pluto is this transformational planet, and it like literally transforms the gate that it's moving through, it mutates the gate that it's moving through. And so having this mutation going through the 41, I mean it's a big deal. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to say that, and think about, I guess, what's going on for those. And I wonder too if I'm not necessarily feeling this transit because I have the 41 natally, but I wonder for those people who don't, if they're having excessive fantasies going on.
I
Um,
wouldn't mind those. I've missed them.
I
Not
know,
to, not to act on, but to think about. Like sometimes my brain gets boring with thinking
I
about
know,
mundane things. Like fantasies are nice.
I know. Well, and it also reminds like there's like a dopamine thing too, but um, I know I think like life gets really boring without fantasy really quick. So
Yeah.
I can relate. But we can leave it there for this week. And as usual, if it is correct for you, if we're on your fractal, if you want to connect, like, subscribe, comment, reach out to us, Instagram, email, all that stuff is in the show notes.
Oh,
Um,
I have to change the mental note for us. I have to change the show notes. I deleted my website. Finally. It's taken a while, so that's no longer going to be on the show notes. So yeah, mental note to Laura to delete that.
well done. Well done all around. Okay, so yeah, so don't go to Laura's website anymore. Something that you're gonna do. But otherwise, do reach out, and we create an Instagram. We're gonna do our undefined ego, undefined G center, right-minded, best at potentially populating that. We'll see how things go. As we are trying to be correct as ourselves and not forcing things out. So yeah, so there's gonna be maybe that to look forward to. Maybe not. I don't know. So Laura, is there anything else?
Thanks for listening.
Thanks
Thanks
for
for being our virtual friends.
thanks for being our virtual friends. We will talk to you next week.
Gotcha on the flip side.